Hi, my name is Vanessa van Dijk, and in this video we are looking into how much you need to use of your serum. So I went ahead, grabbed some of the popular serums, looked into the different textures so I can come up with an overall general guide that you can follow. Not only with the example serums that I have picked, but if you have a serum at home from a different brand that has the same texture, you can still follow that specific guide. Now the way on how I came up with this guide is that every time a serum had a pipette, I would take the pipette, place the drops in the palm of my hand, then rub my hands together and then evenly blend it all over my face and neck until I reach the point that I can apply it evenly and thinly all over. Now this is the guide that I have been following. Of course, you can go ahead and say, well, if you do not like to place the product in the palm of your hand because it's going to absorb most of it, well then there you have two options. Either you're going to use a few drops more but still do not overdo it, or you can immediately place the drops on your face and then start blending it all over. Now if you're going to place the drops immediately onto your face, well then of course you have to slightly adjust the guide, because then usually you would need to use a bit less, like a couple of drops less compared to if you're going to do it in the palm of your hand. But it of course depends on the application way that you prefer and works the best for you. However, if you should have a serum that has a thicker lotion-like or gel-like texture, well then those usually stay still when placing them, so you could place them on your fingertips, then rub your fingertips together and then blend it evenly all over. So this is basically how I have measured it, so that you have some background information on how I came up with this specific guide. Now when it comes to the serums that I have picked, I've put them into different categories based on the texture. So we are going to move on from the thinnest to the thickest texture. So we are starting off with those extremely lightweight, thin water-like serums, which you can see right here. So we have a vitamin C right here, an exfoliant and hydrating serum. Overall, the general guide would be using between 5 to 10 drops for your face and neck. This should be enough to apply it evenly and thinly all over. Then when it comes to sticky or lightweight textured serums, well, you can see the examples right here. Stickier serums would probably be the ordinary niacinamide or hyaluronic acid. When it comes to more the lightweight texture, it's probably more so buffet. But overall, the general guide would be using between 3 to 5 drops for your face and neck. With the stickier serums, you probably have already enough with 3 to 4 drops, because if you're going to use too much of it, the stickiness can become more noticeable, and so therefore it's best to use a little bit with them compared to more of the lightweight non-stickier serums, so that you have a general guide in mind. Then the next category would be emulsions or oily type serum formulations. So this would refer to, for example, the Granactive retinoid, which is an emulsion, or the oily type serums. Those are usually anhydrous solutions and more known when looking into the ordinary products, such as their retinol in squalane. You have salicylic acid anhydrous solution, or their vitamin C with alpha-butane. And those have a slightly oily feel to it. Those aren't oils, but those are basically water-free formulations. And so when applying them to the skin, they kind of sit on the skin for a moment, and they need longer time to absorb into the skin compared to the water-based serums. And therefore my general guide would be 4 to 6 drops for your face and neck. And you could theoretically follow the same guide if you want to use an oil, because then the same amount would apply to this as well and can work extremely well. So start off with 4 drops. If that shouldn't be enough, if you want to include your neck, well then move up to 6 drops. If you're using too much of it, this can easily feel extremely oily and greasy on the skin, so therefore overall do not overdo it. And then the last guide would be if you have serums, lotions with a pump, and they can have different textures based on the formulation. So if you should have a serum with a pump that has more of a gel-like texture, kind of like a thicker water-based serum, you can go with about 1 to 2 pumps. If you should have a lotion-like serum, usually about a pump or about a pea-size amount to a bean-size amount is enough, as you can see right here, because those usually spread out easily all over the face and neck, that you do not need 2 pumps of it, because 2 pumps can easily be quite a lot. Whereas if you should have more of a gel-like texture, well then you can go with about 1.5 pump, more or less about a bean size amount, to evenly apply it all over. And then the last point would be if you have basically serums in a pump that have an extremely water-like texture, and there you can go with about 2 pumps, which would be more than enough for your face and neck. And so then this would be the overall general guide based on how much you're going to use, based on the texture of your serum. But I want to emphasize one more thing, and this is that overall you have to be careful to not overuse your serum. Like, do not use too much, because if you're working, for example, with a strong vitamin C serum, maybe an exfoliant or even a strong retinol serum, using too much of them can increase the risk of experiencing irritation. So this is one downturn. Therefore, I recommend just using enough to apply it evenly and thinly all over, and not more than that, because otherwise, again, you can come across sensitivity. And the other point would be, depending on the formulation of your serum and what else you may want to use, you can come across a skincare pilling if you're going to overuse it, or if you're going to basically apply it the wrong way. This is what I would call. So basically, skincare pilling is what you can experience when all of a sudden you are noticing little white balls that are coming off the skin. And you may think it's your skin, like the dead skin cells, but in fact it's the product that you are the product that's coming off. And so this usually can happen with hyaluronic acid. I have done a specific video on this as well, but it can happen with other serums as well, and depending on the other formulations that you may want to layer before or afterwards. So therefore, here you have my overall general tips, like skincare tips on how you can avoid pilling, which would be, first of all, properly washing your face and then removing the remaining water drops from the skin surface so that you're not going to apply the products on the wet skin. The other point would be avoid mixing, for example, your water-based serums with your oils, or to a certain extent silicone formulations, because usually they do not really like each other. You really have to be careful to not overdo it, and that the product can absorb into the skin before moving on to the next step. And then the other point would be the waiting time in between. If you're using them too soon after one another and they have not properly absorbed into the skin, this can cause this issue. Or the last point, as already mentioned earlier, if you're using just way too much product, then you're just going to rub it off because it starts to dry on the skin rather than absorbing into the skin. So there you have all the tips on how you can avoid skincare pilling, which I did want to emphasize and bring your attention to when working with different formulations of serums, depending on your skin concerns and the serums that you have at home. And so this is basically what I wanted to share with you. I do hope that you enjoyed this overall general guide, that you now have a clear understanding of how much you are going to use based on the products that you have at home, and then have a wonderful experience with them. Now, if you enjoyed this video, if you find it helpful, please don't forget to give the thumbs up as well as share it. And if you now want to learn more about skincare in general, well, I'm going to leave some of the videos at the end of this video so that you can keep on watching, but you will find more of them on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon in the next one. Happy skincaring. Bye.